Hello, good morning. How are you? Good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever time you're listening or watching this. I certainly appreciate it. First and foremost, happy birthday to both my mother and my father. Yes, they were born back-to-back days. So my mom's birthday is on the 27th, my dad's birthday is on the 28th, the day of this release of this episode. So happy birthday to both of them. They're actually born in the same hospital, just a few hours apart. I always have this interesting theory and thought, or maybe it's a fantasy, I don't know, that maybe my grandpas shared a cup of coffee together or something back in the 60s. I don't know why I think that, but it's just kind of funny. Speaking of coffee, cheers again. Hello. Interesting episode today. We are going to come into this one with not a lot of planning. Typically, I like to kind of plan out throughout the week what I want to discuss. I try to kind of put a few things together. Is my phone ringing? No. Okay. So that when the time comes to record, I have some sort of framework of what I want to do. This may be a 10-minute episode. We may talk for 10 minutes. I get it all out there, and then I'm like, all right, I'm done. But it's my show, so it's all right. I can do that. I don't have to fill 4 hours of content anymore. I can kind of just do this as I see fit. Because from the moment that we started this thing, this was not necessarily meant for anything other than a creative platform for me to come on here and talk about certain things. And if people enjoy it, fantastic. If it resonates with people, even better. And if it gives them something, that's the ultimate goal. I get to do my creative outlet and talk once a week for however long. And if somebody gets something out of it and they enjoy it, then that's even better. That's just the cherry on top. I think I want to talk about like traditions today. I was thinking about that. We were taking the kids into school. So I want to talk about traditions not only for snow days, what snow days look like for me now, but society and traditional, the way things are going. Probably talk a little bit about the ice and Minnesota situation and that whole thing, but not in the way you think. I can promise you that it won't be in the way that you think, and maybe not even the way that you think either. So whichever side you're on and whichever way you're thinking I'm going on that, I'm probably not going to go that direction, and you're probably going to be disappointed or you're going to be really angry. And either way, it doesn't matter. I just want to get some of those things, some of those thoughts off my chest. I'm also going to talk about my kids' injuries over these last couple of snow days. Yeah, injuries. I don't know. Anyway, welcome to the show. All right, so we're going to start out with traditions and things like that. So we were on our way to school this morning, and right now our driveway is still kind of a mess from all the winter storm and the snow that came through. And I just haven't had a chance to really dig out a space to try to get my car out of it. My car's a front-wheel drive, smaller vehicle. So we've just been taking my wife's car everywhere. She's got a Yukon. It's got four-wheel drive. And probably should have spent some time yesterday digging out the concrete pad behind where my car goes out of the garage so I could get a running start for the road. Because once I get it out on the road, front-wheel drive, it's a pretty good car. Anyway. This is going to be one of those episodes. I'm going to go off on lots of tangents, but I'll try to bring it back. So stick with me. We were driving to school. I was going to take everybody in and then come back here and do this. And I was thinking about snow day traditions and how it used to be whenever I was at home, my parents' house. Happy birthday, Mom and Dad, again. How the snow would come down, and then you basically would just get up, and it was going to be a sledding, video games, maybe like homemade pizza or some type of easy thing type of day. And we still try to do that to this day. Mom always makes chocolate chip cookies, and she always makes hot chocolate on the stove in the pan, in the pot. She doesn't do the instant thing. At least I don't think so. If she has, she's been fooling us for years. So there's that, and then usually it's either like a chili or a soup or, like I said, homemade pizza. That was always kind of the routine. You go out, you sled, you play in the snow, snowball fights, whatever. You get cold, you come in and either throw on a Disney movie in the old box that they came in, or you would play video games. That was kind of the routine of what we did. Mom was always a teacher, so she would have snow days on the same days that we had snow days. So now, fast forward, I become a dad, and for the first, 5 years, 6 of my children's lives, on snow days, I was expected to go to work. I worked in media. So we were an integral part to what was happening on snow days, reporting on roads, telling about wrecks, saying where to stay away from, reporting on the weather constantly, things like that. So I was always expected to go to work. In fact, there were times where if I felt like I couldn't go home, the storm was coming in, and make it back to work the next morning because of the storm, I was more than welcome to sleep at the building and sleep at the office. That way I was there already and could get up the next day and do my job. And there was some annoyingness to that, and there was a little bit of, looking back on it now, like, I don't know, you kind of, it's important, but in today's world, is it as important because there's so much social media out there? So it's one of those things. When you're working in media and radio, I almost felt like my job would have been, now looking at it, my job probably would have been better served to be at home just reporting through social media, Maybe not. Who knows? But that's what I did. So I didn't get a lot of chance for those snow days. But my wife has always been a teacher, so when they had snow days and the kids had snow days, she was home with them. And at times she couldn't make it to somewhere else to go play and do the things in the snow, but then when the snow would go away, maybe she'd have a chance to do so. But I was thinking about the traditions of that when I was a kid versus now, and these last couple of days, being able to be a part of the snow days fun, and kind of introduce my kids to those snow day traditions and be able to be there has been, without a doubt, the best thing that could have ever happened. It's like I say all the time, as much as it hurt me to be fired from my job and have to figure out what to do next, there's been so many moments since that day that have made me feel like it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And these snow days have been that way. And I've really enjoyed kind of introducing them to those traditions. So we went back to my parents' house because they have the hill, and we tried to do some sledding. But this snow, if you're in the Southern Illinois region or in the Midwest region, it was kind of like little tiny pieces of ice. It wasn't like what you would, when you put snow together, it didn't really compact well together. It was almost like it was like what sand feels like, but in the form of snow a little bit. It just kind of ran through. It didn't really compact together because there wasn't a lot of water on it yet. And it was still coming down. It was still windy, and it was still really, really, really cold. So the moisture in the air hadn't a chance to, we don't get to get into the science lesson, but basically it just wasn't great sledding snow necessarily. But we still had a good time. Mom made hot chocolate. Kids got to do the chocolate chip cookie thing. We got to hang out. And of course, since, you got teachers in your lives every once in a while, on snow days you get to spike your coffee just a little bit. And so the traditions have been passed down now. And it's interesting that that's sort of a tradition, and doing those sort of things for us, not only have they been great, but I'm curious about your traditions. Let me know what kind of traditions that you have around snow days. Do your parents always work, so you really didn't have them? Or maybe you were old enough to get out and about on your own, so then you kind of made your own. What was everybody's different dynamic when it came to snow days? I know, obviously, coming up in a house where there was a teacher, school was off for you, school was off for them. But, like I said, two parents. My dad didn't always have the job of in the education world. He was working a lot. So on days where there was snow and snow days, that's not really going to work for him. He still had to go to work. And I'm sure there's a lot of houses like that. But are there other snow day traditions that you had whenever you were growing up? And did it include injuries? Because both of my kids went to school today with major injuries. Honestly, if CPS isn't at my front door by the end of the day, it'll be because they just can't get up the driveway at this point. Nothing happened. I didn't do anything. Neither did my wife. Literally just snow days and being crazy and cooped up in the house is what happened to both of my kids. We had the snow day tradition and fun at my mom's house, and then we decided to go to my wife's mom's house for other snow day fun. They have a side-by-side, pull the kids around on the side-by-side on the sleds. Side-by-sides on the sleds in the snow. Say that 15 times fast. So we're doing that, and of course, kids get comfortable, kids get more brave, and dads are going to have a good time with it and try to pull them as fast as they can and do all kinds of stuff. I did, but when you're pulling two sleds at the same time behind a side-by-side at 18 miles an hour, when someone falls off, they don't always fall off away from the other person. Needless to say, my child and her cousin smacked heads or faces or something. I don't know. It was kind of blurry back there with the snow flying everywhere. So she had, I don't know if it was a bruise or just like kind of a mark on her face. So that's always fun to see. Last night, which it wasn't too bad this morning. But then our 2-year-old, almost 3-year-old, Tasmanian devil is what he is. And because these kids have been cooped up in the house and just kind of in and out in spurts for the better part of a few months now with this weather, and especially with the snow that's come down and the cold that has been around, they get a little cabin fever, a little crazy. So they start chasing each other around and doing all kinds of stuff. Well, last night they were doing it and they were having fun. They were running around Dad's chair. And I didn't see it happen, but I heard it. And from the sounds of things, one of them bumped into the other. It would be the bigger one bumping into the smaller one. And we have a grate that sits around our fireplace. This big, tall, it's like a gate, but it's a grate to keep the pops and things from getting out onto the carpet. It's this big, tall thing, big metal thing. It's real heavy duty. Shout out Mom and Dad for bringing that too. She bumped into him. I don't think it was on purpose. At least I hope not. And he went face first into the grate. So not only is my daughter going to school with like kind of a mark on this side of her face from smacking her other face or smacking her face into her cousin's face, but then my son is going with a little gash above his eye and a bruised eye, and he bit his lip and busted up the inside of his lip on it. It's not funny, but they're okay, and I didn't do anything wrong, but it's just one of those things where kids' injuries this time of year, and that's what I told my daughter whenever she got hurt. I said, it's going to happen. This is not really a safe thing that we're doing necessarily, but it's fun, and we're being as safe as possible, so you'll be okay, and it'll only hurt for just a minute. So those are kind of traditions and snow day fun and things that have happened for us for the last couple of days, and it almost made me feel like as I was taking them back to school, there's other traditions that are kind of happening and other things that are changing, and this is where the bigger conversation of society kind of going back in time has kind of come up the last few days in our house between me and my wife, but also in my head just kind of seeing how things are progressing. So when I talk about society like going backwards, I don't necessarily mean in a negative way, and I don't know if I mean it in this overly positive way like some people think. They're like, oh, we're getting back to the old ways, and the old ways kind of suck at times. There's a lot of great things today. There's really not a better time to be in the world. There's so much that is available to you and things that you can do, and it's just I don't necessarily want to go back to the old ways, but there's some tradition. I always feel like there's traditions and values and things that you can build upon from the way things used to be done. But a lot of people are like, we need to do it that way again. And it's like, I don't think you need to do it that way, but you need to find a way to apply how you feel the world should be into today's sort of standards. And I guess what I mainly mean about that is it seems like there's a big push here lately to go back to like being local. A lot of people, I know that my wife and we're pretty much that way. If we do go out, which is seldom, there's another thing that doesn't happen anymore. A lot of people used to go out way more. And then you can have this whole argument about, well, just nobody's making that much and things cost this much and blah, 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 blah. That's maybe true. I don't know. I'm not an economist. And it does seem like things are more expensive now. But also at the same time, I don't know. It could just be pretty close to that, to what it used to be. That's not the discussion I want to have. I want to get into the discussion of it seems like people want to go out less in general. I don't think it necessarily has everything to do or anything to do with the cost of everything. Maybe prices have gone up because people are starting to go out way less, and these businesses are like, oh man, we're not making nearly as much as we used to on a daily basis, so we got to kind of up our prices to make up the difference in sales for an entire week, because we're only getting people once a week as opposed to maybe we get them on, Tuesday night and then Friday night, or Tuesday night and Saturday night, or whatever it may be. There's all kinds of things that can go into it. And then we could get into the conspiracy side of things, but we're not going to do that because that's for a different podcast that maybe I should start. But it does feel like there's been this push to go a little bit more local and more traditional, meaning instead of going to a chain restaurant, we tend to try to hit the places that we know are locally owned. And I think that's a good thing. And I also feel like a lot of these businesses, especially in our area, tend to want to work together. They want to do things that kind of, okay, there's a couple businesses in Centralia, for example, where they've got these little coins. And when you go to one business, if you've never been to another business, you take the coin and the people at the one basically say, hey, if you're going over here, take this with you. It's 10% off your entire order. Great. And then when you get to the other one, they give you one for that business. So then you'll eventually come back. So it's like they're sharing the customers, and they're sending customers down the street. There's one business where they're like, we don't really have like a full food menu, but if you go right down here down the road, or you go across the street, you can get something to eat. There's a full menu. There's great places to eat, just kind of depending on what you're feeling for tonight. And I feel like that's happening more. And I feel like most people, they're trying to get away from, if I'm going to go out to eat, I'm going to go to a place that I know is local, that's helping someone in the area better their business. And they're a little bit sick and tired of going through fast food, going through drive-thrus, or going to a chain restaurant where the standards are in the shitter, basically. You would think at a chain there would be very strict standards, and at a local business it would fall short because it's a guy or a girl trying to do their best. But there's a lot of times I feel like I go to a local place and the standards are much higher at these places. And so I feel like there's this big push for localism, especially around where we live, than there ever was before. It's kind of funny. I told my wife the other day, I was like, if I was going to start a business nowadays, and maybe it's stupid, I'm not a business person, but I guess I kind of am. But I would maybe think about starting a business with like a hometown grocery store or like a local meat market. Because all people want now, they don't necessarily want to raise the beef or have the garden, but they would like to buy from someone locally that is willing to do that sort of thing. And there's so many people that will say, well, there's still local grocery stores. They're just so much more expensive. Maybe true, but also there's a lot of that. As long as the service is there. I worked at a grocery store forever, and it was always the most expensive place, but it was also the best place to buy meat, and it was the best place for customer service. You never walked up and down an aisle looking like you were looking for something and didn't have someone, even a high school kid that worked there, be able to come up to you and be like, can I help you find anything? And they knew where it was, too. Ask me where something is in the old IGA, and I'll tell you. Well, not now because it's changed hands and they've changed everything around. But back in the day, I could tell you where everything was. But it was just, even as a younger kid, I understood the value of that customer service, and I think it's coming back in a big way. At least I hope it is. It feels like it is, but who's to say that it won't, go away? But it almost feels a little bit more like when we were growing up. And the reason I thought of all this is because when we were on the way to school, my wife wasn't complaining, but she was kind of like bummed because she was like, I really would have loved another snow day. Of course you would. Another day off, to do nothing, hang out with your family all day, that'd be great. So she wasn't complaining, but she's like, oh, I just don't want to go today. And I didn't blame her at all. But looking around at the roads, I was like, but the roads are pretty good. And there's always that grace period of people being like, look, I understand the roads are the way they are. If you can't make it in, don't come in. Or if you are a little bit late, no big deal. We're just going to try to get back to school and get in session. And whenever COVID happened, the e-learning boom, and basically you don't have any, the traditional snow day was gone. I never thought we would get back to that point of going back to school a little too early. Because why go back to school? You don't lose a day, you just do an e-learning day. So why not just wait that extra day for the roads to be completely good to go and then send the kids back? But I kind of like how today it felt like the roads weren't quite ready everywhere, but they were ready enough. Let's get these kids' asses back in school and let's get them in front of them, because I think there's also a value, going back to the traditional ways, of understanding how much we lost by not having kids in school regularly or having that same routine. And I think some of the good things that happened with COVID is there's that infrastructure of e-learning now, and there's that routine and schedule in case there's a bad ice storm or a bad snowstorm, to where you can take a couple of days and not lose as much. But one of the negatives was the lack of learning and the lack of wanting to be at school. Everything wanted to be at home, and we might as well just be at home. But I think it's kind of hurt some of the in-classroom stuff a little bit, because now everybody's got their Chromebooks and they just want to sit there on their Chromebook, but they're not really paying attention to what they're supposed to be doing. So that interaction has come to kind of a screeching halt. It's the same thing as what we talked about last week of people not really knowing how to converse. And they blame it on they don't like the small chit chat. And I don't really either. But at the same time, out of that small chit chat, you just have to learn how to have a regular conversation. If someone wants to chit chat with you, and it seems like they're interesting or you're interested in some of the things, then just have a conversation. Learn a little bit more about them. Now, if you don't want to chit-chat, and you don't want to have that conversation, or you don't like the way that person is coming off, then you can find a way to kind of shut it down a little bit quicker. Or if you're not in the mood, that's okay too. But for the most part, why not? What else you got to do? Are you that busy that you can't have a normal conversation or have an expanded conversation with somebody? And I think it kind of goes back to the school thing and being in that environment of the lesson, the instruction, talking, writing, analog. And technology is a good thing. That's what it goes back to the beginning of what I'm saying. This whole episode. You have to be able to take the traditional analog sort of way and then add it to the upgraded technology. I've got the laptop, I've got the phone, I've got everything here, but I also am very analog in the way I do this sort of thing. And I think that would benefit a lot of people to learn how to do that, and also learn a little bit more about how to be in customer service. And with the way things are going, it's just kind of interesting how things have shaked out in the world. And that kind of leads me into what I said at the beginning, how we may kind of touch on the subject of traditions and things going backwards as a society, but also it may end up bringing up some of the conversations about ICE agents and, the thing in Minneapolis or Minnesota, wherever it was in Minnesota. So I think there's a big part of our generation, and this is not going to go the way you think it is. So if you think this is going to go political one way or the other, you're dead wrong. It's hard being of the party of, so many people say that they're down the middle, and I don't think that they are, and I don't know if I am either. But I feel like there's a party of the people, if you want to call it that, where we're all people and we're all humans. And whether you think everything that's happening is a good thing, or whether you think everything happening is, terrorism or whatever, or whether you don't really care that those two people were shot and killed, or whether you really care and it makes you sad and upset. The problem is looking at it as if it has to be black and white. There's just this whole, I don't know what the word is. There's this whole section, maybe. There's this whole group of people who know that none of this is black and white. And it's not that simple. In the most serious of situations, it's okay to make a joke. Now, I'm not going to do that. That sort of situation is not. But down the road, a lot of times there can be jokes made in a lot of serious situations. And then there's times where jokes are not, they're in very poor taste and that sort of thing. But the biggest issue is actually that there's a group of people that know that it's not black and white, but there's also that same group of people see the hypocrisy of everything that is really going on. And there's also a conspiracy theory element to it of, for example, everybody now is saying, okay, the thing happened in Minnesota, however they feel about it. But then they want to bring up, well, the same guy that's the ICE director now was also the ICE director whenever the other president, Obama, was in office, and they did almost the same thing, but now the media is turning it this way. And so there's that conspiracy theory, quote unquote, of people thinking that this is a media-driven narrative. Okay, whether that is true or not, and there's probably some truth to it. All stories have two sides, and both sides have a little bit of truth to them. So you have to find the middle ground of where you believe and go from there. The problem with being one of those people that knows that not everything is simply black and white and kind of seeing the hypocrisy of everything that is going on is the fact that we just would like a little bit more of, I guess, empathy or sympathy for the whole thing. I think there's this big generation of people that we didn't grow up with a war or going to war, or parents that went to war or that served or that were growing up in a time period where it was just a little bit harder living. We're growing up, basically everybody my age to their mid-40s is growing up in an era of a little bit more simple, and everything's just a little bit easier. However, we're also a little bit more in touch with our emotions and our brains and how we understand that in moments we're like, oh, this is a moment where I'm feeling a little bit of like anxiety about what's going on. And we don't try to let it cripple us, at least not most of the people do, because we're trying to be aware of it, acknowledge it, and move through it. And that's what we're trying to teach our kids of like, look, I am a firm believer that at times discipline is discipline. And that can come in many forms. And there is a time for certain types of discipline, and there's a time for a little bit of compassion and understanding and going that route. Just like last night, whenever my oldest accidentally bumped into the youngest, and he smoked his face and busted open his lip on the fireplace grate. She tried to lie about it, or she tried to omit the truth, and I basically said, look, I'm going to be more mad at you, and you're going to be in more trouble if you lie about it, and I basically figure it out. And I've already figured it out, so you might as well just tell me the truth, and we'll work through it. So she said, yeah, I bumped into him, but it was an accident. I said, I figured it was, so why don't you just tell your brother that you're sorry and see if there's anything you can do for him. And just do that from the very beginning. I'm doing that because in the long run, I would like her to trust me and be able to tell me things even whenever she knows that it's not going to put her in a good light or in a good position. But I would rather her trust me and then me can discipline her in a different way as opposed to just reacting. I'm trying to lay the groundwork for the future so I don't have a reactionary thing to all that I'm doing. And whether that's right or not, I don't know, okay? I don't know. I know there's a lot of great things that you can do, and there's a lot of silly things that you can do as parents, but we're doing the best we can one day at a time. I don't know where I was going with all this. I guess I simply just, with everything that is going on, I feel like there's probably a big group of people out there who believe, like I believe, that while some of it is probably necessary and some of it is okay, you can be a little bit more aggressive and assertive, and you can establish this and things that need to happen that we don't necessarily know need to happen. But I guess we would just like the people that are leading the charge on a lot of this to show a little bit more sympathy. Because when you get right down to it, whether you think that those two people that were killed for all that is right or wrong, or maybe you know it's wrong, but you believe that they're at fault because they were put themselves in that situation, a lot of it can be true on both sides. I think if you just acknowledge that it's just a terrible, misfortunate thing that had happened, it takes the sting out of everybody's reaction. And I think that's the biggest problem, is now we're just reactionary. And instead of being like, that was a person who had kids and maybe they made a bad decision, maybe the other person made a bad decision, or they reacted incorrectly, or the other person reacted incorrectly, the agent acted incorrectly. Whether you believe one way or the other, I think everybody just wants there to be a little bit more of like, that really sucks, because now that parent doesn't get to go home. Sucks for them, sucks for their kids. It sucks for the other person because now they have that on their conscience and they're still living and now having to deal with everything and all the repercussions of their decision in that moment. Once you acknowledge all those things, that everything can be true at once, everything, everywhere, all at once, everything can be true at once, and it's not a black and white, you're wrong, I'm wrong, he's wrong, she's wrong situation. You can kind of come together and deal with any of these problems or have a discussion about any of this stuff. And I feel like that'll make everybody just a little bit better off. However, that doesn't go for clicks and that doesn't go for views, and that's another problem for another day and another episode. Hopefully I didn't piss everybody off, or hopefully I didn't piss off half the people. The 10 people that watch versus the other 10 people that watch and listen, with my little bit of a rant and my tirade and my off-the-wall tangent. I feel like this whole thing, this is the tangent episode. We just went off on a tangent for however long we've been doing this. To me, in my head, it feels like we've been doing this for 10 minutes or maybe an hour, somewhere in between. Let me know what you'd like to hear about next week. I hope you enjoyed this. If you didn't, don't hate me. I'll try to be better next week, as I do every time. Just remember, you've only got one life to live, so make sure that you go out there and make it your own way, because all you have in this life is your name, and a name is what you make it.